Imagine you are just performing your duties at work when suddenly the heir to the company gets into a conflict with you for always smiling. Initially, it seemed that this man was just bothering you, but later, after a romance began to develop between you, the reason he hated fake smiles so much moved you. The story begins with the protagonist on her way to a job interview at the King Hotel. Everything starts going wrong when, just seconds before entering to introduce herself, her shoe heel breaks. Despite not having a bachelor's degree, which was one of the requirements, the heiress of the King Empire liked the way Sarang improvised to her requests and promised to get back to her. But for the protagonist, it was obvious she wouldn't be called for the job, so at night, Sarang and her best friends, with whom she shared an apartment, went out to do what they loved most, drink and have fun. However, the next day, the surprise for the protagonist arrived with the sunrise, as she received a call informing her that she had been hired for the job at the King Hotel, which obviously made her companions very happy. Now let's move on to Gu-won, a young heir who will start at his father's company as an intern, so he can learn the basics and grow as his understanding of the business increases. However, Gu-won doesn't hide his wealth, starting with the fact that on his first day at work, he arrives by parachute. But since none of his future colleagues saw him doing this, we see that during the new intern's training, his superior starts to bother him for wearing expensive clothes and being different from the others. In other words, the man has no idea who Gu-won's father is, which was good in a way because it allowed the young man to see how some employees treat those below them. He also made a friend in Sang-sik, a man who tried his best to help Gu-won with some tasks to ensure he was hired permanently, who was also an intern and often mentioned how much he needed the job. However, due to a problem with the copier involving ink, even though it was the superior's fault, he blamed Sang-sik and Gu-won, which resulted in them being fired by someone even higher up. At this moment, Gu-won decided to reveal who he was, explaining why he wasn't affected by the news of the dismissal. He also took Sang-sik with him to be his secretary since the young man was also penalized, and at that moment, the expressions on the faces of those who mistreated them all day were priceless. Later, we see Gu-won talking with his father and older sister. Since the father doesn't know the details of what happened and Gu-won doesn't bother to explain, it seems he was fired for something trivial, making it appear that Gu-won isn't making any effort to understand the family fortune and just wants to enjoy it. In his father's eyes, this is disappointing. Even though Gu-won's sister says a few words in his favor in front of their father, we see that when it's just the two of them, she wants him to go back to the country he was in because having Gu-won around means a race for the company inheritance is starting, and surprisingly, she manages to hide this side of herself very well from their father. The next day, the protagonist's training for her new job begins, and as soon as she enters the hotel, Sarang remembers the first time her mother showed her one, and that's when her passion for the industry began. The protagonist starts by taking care of the gym clients and learns that she should always keep a beautiful smile on her face, regardless of her feelings. But right from the start, her co-worker, who was supposed to show her the ropes, doubted Sarang and took every opportunity to put her down, even saying she wouldn't last a month in the job. Meanwhile, one of Sarang's best friends was suffering at the hands of her superior. This is Pyonghwa, who works as a flight attendant, another branch of the King Company. And Deyul, the third member of the group, also works in one of the King Group's branches, selling accessories. Despite all being dedicated, it's unanimous that they struggle under their bosses. Now back to Gu-won, we see the man shopping for some clothes, and he chooses a t-shirt with a tiger print on the back. Gu-won buys 2 of the 3 that were created, only not taking all because one had already been sold. And his secretary, Sang-sik, is about to have his life changed overnight because Gu-won told him to pack his bags as they would soon be leaving for the United Kingdom. Meanwhile, something annoying happened at work with Sarang. A client who was making a lot of noise in the gym got it into his head that the protagonist was following him and wanted to go out with him. So, this man prepared a tip and wrote a note for her, then asked Sarang's co-worker to deliver it. Of course, the protagonist couldn't contain herself with the man's inappropriate attitude, so she went to the first tiger t-shirt she found and said everything she thought. However, Sarang didn't know she had the wrong person, and Gu-won ended up hearing what he didn't need to. He couldn't even understand the situation because his sister appeared, asking him to leave the country soon, shifting his focus. But for Sarang, the appearance of the executive director was a blessing because when testing the protagonist's knowledge, the woman decided she was too good to stay just in the gym and promoted her to the lobby. Once again, this wasn't well received by her superior, who said Sarang wouldn't last long in this role, showing a clear case of envy. But the protagonist didn't let these things affect her, and later, she celebrated with her friends. Now we see some years ahead, and some things have changed as the story progresses. Starting with Gu-won, the man decided to return to his father's house after receiving an employee registration document containing the name Han Mi-so. And the protagonist was finally hired permanently at the King Hotel. She received some awards for her wonderful work and continues to perform beautifully regardless of the area she works in. Continuing with Gu-won, he chose to work at the hotel, and now the competition among the King Empire's children has begun. Opening a parenthesis, apparently something happened to the man's mother because when his father mentions making a memorial for her, Gu-won says he doesn't understand, as they don't know if she is alive or really gone. Which prompts the sister to make a comment that makes it clear they are not children of the same mother. As for the trio of friends, Deul took a different path from the others as she got married and ended up having a beautiful daughter, meaning the nights of partying were over. The next day, we see that Sarang isn't feeling well, so when she goes to the presidential suite to fetch Gu-won's phone as requested, she takes the opportunity to make a quick stop in the bathroom. However, since he had also forgotten some documents, we see Gu-won returning to his room and at that moment, he finds an employee in the bathroom. The man immediately remembers the day Sarang yelled at him, so the protagonist apologizes for today but not for that day, as she doesn't know the truth. In the end, Gu-won goes to his appointment, and they agree never to see each other again. But this promise didn't last long, as later there was a ceremony to celebrate Gu-won's arrival as the main manager, and the employee chosen to present a bouquet of flowers was the one who received the Best Talent Award, i.e., the protagonist. While the man was giving his speech, it seemed for a few moments that he was about to have a panic attack, but by controlling his breathing, Gu-won managed to complete the task. When Sarang went to give him the flowers, she did everything she could to keep him from seeing her face, as the protagonist felt very embarrassed when she realized that the man she had so many disagreements with was one of her bosses. However, Gu-won recognized who she was, so the protagonist had to maintain her composure and pretend it was their first meeting. Later, in Gu-won's office, Sarang and the man finally laid all their cards on the table, which made her understand that Gu-won was not the same man who had acted repugnantly in the gym, and now she did apologize for that day. At this moment, Gu-won took the opportunity to ask her never to smile in front of him again, no matter if it was her job, because the man couldn't stand fake smiles. Meanwhile, an unforeseen event occurred at Pyonghwa's work involving the newbie, and to prevent her from being punished, the woman took the blame, even though it was part of her superior's job. Since her colleague didn't agree with seeing Pyonghwa bending over backward to prevent a passenger from complaining, he helped her fix the whole situation. Back to Sang-sik, after a misunderstanding with an employee who was hitting on him thinking he was Gu-won, the secretary decided to take her out of the welcome dinner for the main manager and put Sarang in her place. However, the protagonist isn't very accustomed to dining with people of such status, and after standing up at the end of Gu-won's father's toast, the man invited her to give a speech for his son. As always, Sarang gave a great impromptu performance. In the end, she even took home the head of a very expensive tuna, which was a gift from the president. Since she doesn't eat fish, her friends enjoyed it. Later, we see Sarang finding some of her notes and a drawing she made when she was a child, showing once again in her memories that she always wanted to work in a hotel and later own one. The next day, we see that Deul was promoted, and as she had agreed with her friends that when they became bosses, they wouldn't abuse their power, Dyul implemented new rules for her team, creating a healthier work environment. However, it wasn't easy for those used to the old methods. Meanwhile, Gu-won ended up saving the protagonist from a troublesome guest. A lady with significant internet influence wanted to exchange her room for a larger suite and pay with publicity, which wasn't possible. Even though Sarang explained this to her, the lady insisted. Since the situation wasn't resolved even with Gu-won's presence, who approached when he saw Sarang struggling, he ordered the security guards to remove her from the premises. After a stressful day, the protagonist's night wasn't much better. Sarang went out with her boyfriend, but instead of enjoying the view, he became bothered after receiving a call from his friends at a bar, pestering the protagonist to leave. So, the couple went to the establishment to meet them, and what was supposed to be just a few minutes extended for hours. Not to mention that Sarang was left sitting at a table with some girls she had never seen before, while the man seemed very close to his colleagues, most of whom were women. Putting all these facts together, the protagonist decided to leave, and seeing her go, the boyfriend promised to say goodbye to the others to accompany her. However, as soon as he went back inside, he forgot about Sarang waiting outside, so the protagonist decided to leave sad and alone. Meanwhile, Gu-won was searching the company's records for the name Han Mi-so, and even though he had this person's employee documentation printed, the database couldn't locate her. The next day, we see the trio Sang-sik, Sarang, and Gu-won traveling to promote the new main manager's entry at the King Hotel. However, before the live recording began, Warren sent new questions to the protagonist about Gu-won's mother. When the woman asked them live, Gu-won just gave her a disappointed look and walked off. Thus, Sarang had to improvise until he returned, and as we already know, she is very good at this. Once Gu-won composed himself, he returned to the interview and asked to see the questions selected for the protagonist. All involved his mother, so Gu-won threw the cards in the air and asked Sarang to conduct it her way. As there was a beautiful sunset behind them, the two stood up to watch and invited the viewers to do the same, which worked and went viral on social media. But when the filming ended, Sarang expressed her irritation with the situation, as not following the script could cause her dismissal. However, since it was a very personal matter for Gu-won, he didn't even explain what the problem was in the interview. Now alone in his hotel room, we see that the broken pocket watch Gu-won always carries was a gift from his mother. The next day, we see Pyung-hwa thanking Ro-woon for his help with a gift for his mother. Continuing with the protagonist, the photographers hired to take Gu-won's promotional photos were angels, as it was really difficult to do this job since the man wasn't cooperative at all. Things got worse later because the last shots were on a boat, meaning the couple was on one boat while the photographers were on another. But when it was time to return, the captain informed them that their boat was broken and they needed to go to a nearby island, so with no other choice, the two just accepted. Now in a place with little light and no signal, it didn't take long for Gu-won, who appeared to be scared, to faint upon seeing an old lady in the middle of nowhere. When he woke up, it was even worse as he felt like he was in a horror movie until he found the protagonist. At least the two had a place to stay until the boat was ready. Although it was a simpler hotel than Gu-won was used to, it was better than nothing. Combining the protagonist's company with a drink, we see that Gu-won's heart began to fall for Sarang. The next day, the two had a surprise when it came time to pay for the hotel. The old lady took advantage of the couple's situation to charge absurd prices for everything she offered, but since the protagonist is the best in this field, Sarang knew exactly the maximum everything could cost. When she threatened to expose the scam, her son, who owned the supposedly broken boat, accepted half the amount charged. Soon after, they returned home, and Gu-won was reprimanded by his father for his behavior in the interview. The man also said that Gu-won was too old to go after his mother and that love doesn't exist for people of their social status. However, Gu-won made it clear that he needs to know the truth about what happened to his mother, which made his father even angrier. In the next scene, we see the president rewarding the protagonist for handling the crisis during the interview. The man personally gave her a promotion to the Royal Smile, another area where only the best employees work, as they take care of the hotel's VIP guests. Meanwhile, Gu-won realized he liked Sarang, but when he went down with a gift to start winning her over, he saw the protagonist being hugged by her boyfriend, which made Gu-won give up. Continuing with Sarang, she finally realized that this relationship wasn't working. Her boyfriend always preferred going out with friends over spending time with her, and even though he promised to change, it never happened. Thus, the protagonist decided it was time to end the relationship. What did you think of these episodes? I hope you enjoyed the summary. Leave your suggestions in the comments and subscribe. If you liked the video, like and share to help me out. See you next time.